Murder case in Hillsborough County is now going to trial. When investigators arrived at this home in Riverview in March of 2018, they found a mother and daughter dead, an 8-year-old boy clinging to life. They say the children's father, Ronnie O Neal, did it. And now a jury will soon decide his fate. Fox 13's Gloria Gomez shows us what happened in court today.
In a charcoal-colored suit and tie, Ronnie O Neal is representing himself on 2 murder charges that could send him to death row if convicted. On the first day of jury selection, potential jurors were told what was on the line.
The state is seeking the death penalty.
In a soft and timid voice, O'Neal questioned one man about having an open mind despite what he's heard on TV.
And did you have any informed opinions based on what you heard and saw or read?
I did not.
O'Neal had a much different tone at his last hearing, where he compared himself to a dead rapper.
Ready to die like B.I.G., just like I'm gonna be.
O'Neal is accused of killing Kenyatta Barron, the mother of his children, his 9-year-old daughter, Ronivia, and the attempted murder of his 8-year-old son, Ronnie Jr. They say afterward he set the house on fire. From his hospital bed, little Ronnie, who could barely speak, told detectives about the horror he witnessed. Now little Ronnie will have to relive that all over again when he testifies at O'Neal's trial next week. Gloria Gomez, Fox 13 News.
Hello, Sofa Squad. I hope everybody's doing well today. Today, we're going to have a little bit more of a serious sofa discussion. This case, this trial, it's literally gone viral. Number one, it's completely heinous what this monster did. Second to that is it's completely heinous how this monster decided to represent himself and the theatrics that he put on in court. It's been a hot minute since the sofa has seen some behavior like this. And so what I want to do for today's video is talk about that, the court case, the actual case itself, and some of the parts that really stuck out to me. Now, the person that I'm talking about is Ronnie O Neal III. Again, Ronnie is on trial for really bad stuff. He was accused of taking the life of his girlfriend, his daughter with special needs, and then trying to take the life of his son back in 2018. Thankfully, thank God, the son lived. And this is like a rock and a hard place. The son would have to testify against his father. You know, obviously, thank God he did help bring him to justice, but what a horrible thing for a child to have to go through. And we'll talk more in depth about that. Now, before we get too deep into today's video, I do want to give a shout out to all the Patreons, the members, the channel subscribers, the commenters, everybody for making the Sofa Squad possible. I couldn't do it without you, and I really appreciate it. If you do want to see more videos by me, consider joining Patreon or a channel membership. It also helps the channel keep going. And also, if you like scary movies and want to see me talk about those and dish on those, I do have another channel. It's completely free. You can check out the link to it as well as the other things I talked about all in the description below. Again, thank you to everyone for making the sofa the place to be. Ronnie O Neal III has recently gone viral with his trial, with his antics, and we are talking about like Christopher McNabb viral type thing, okay? When I watched this, I was like, oh my God, it's like, you know, the next up to bat to do some crazy stuff during their trial is Ronnie, but it just was very reminiscent of the McNabb trial. Ronnie decided to represent himself against the better judgment of, I think, everyone involved. And not only was that clearly a completely poor decision on his part, the choices that he made as to how to handle himself in his own defense was so shocking. I was just like, you've got to be kidding. So we're going to start with the opening statement. So Ronnie decides, you know, he's going to represent himself. He's doing his opening statements to form the argument as to why he is not guilty. He makes the decision to scream and yell at the jurors.
The evidence is going to show that we are under some of the most vicious, lying, fabricating, fictitious government you ever seen.
Ronnie opens up by saying that we're under the rule of a vicious government and is essentially blaming a lot of what's taken place on the government. He goes as far as to say that by the time the trial is over with, the jury is going to see who the real murderers are, Tampa, the state of Florida, and I'm just watching it like, it's like he wants to go to Old Sparky. You know what I'm saying? And maybe he does. I don't know. So some of the highlights from the opening. Number one, he says that the evidence will show that he loved his children. And I'm just like, yeah. Very curious to see when that was going to happen, and guess what? It never did show that. Now, he also says that the evidence will show that this case was tampered with from start to finish. Ronnie is very good at victim blaming, and he starts off with his girlfriend, saying that she had threatened him just a few weeks ago with a knife, and how she was constantly arguing, didn't get along with his other baby mama. Now, he also opens the door and puts that thought out there of, you know what, you can't believe what my son says, because he is not being consistent with his statements. He also has PTSD, so it can't be trusted. And I'm just like, I can't imagine why your son has PTSD. Does anybody here have any guesses? So we're going to go ahead and sofa sidebar these damn opening statements. Here's my thing. Ronnie O Neal III is so angry. He is so full of some kind of rage, some narcissistic something, that watching it, I'm just like, oh my God, this guy 100% has demonstrated to the jury that, number one, he is completely capable of taking out his family. Okay, there's not a question left about that. But number two, even watching it to the TV, he's completely unsettling. And I was like, if I was a jury, I'm like, I don't want him near me, just get him away. And me watching him, I was just like, okay, this is what he looked like when he took his family out. This is the rage, this is the anger, this is the ego, the narcissism, all that bad stuff that this family has been subjected to, and this is what they were looking at in their final moments. The events that led up to this trial, though, are so horrifying. It's literally what nightmares are made out of. Now, moving forward for like the next good little bit of this video, y'all, we're slapping this damn thing with a trigger warning. This is for anyone out there that, you're gonna be not comfortable with hearing this is violence. It's violence against children. I'm not gonna go into like hardcore descriptions, and I'm gonna try and reel in some of the wording and whatnot, but just know going forward, I mean, y'all, this guy is completely crazy, and the things that he did to his family are inexcusably horrifying. Around midnight on March 18th, 2018, a terrifying phone call was placed to 911. Kenyatta Barron, who was his girlfriend, the now late girlfriend, she was screaming and pleading for help to the 911 operator. Now, her phone call would go on for several minutes. Ronnie O Neal III is heard in the background saying, "She killed me," and "Allah Akbar." Now, Barron had run and hid in her daughter's closet, and then Ronnie had hunted her down like an animal in there. Now, this altercation, this fight, this would lead to going outside to a neighbor's porch door area, and this is where Ronnie would take her life with a sawed-off shotgun. He would beat her to death with this gun, and the broken-off part would later be shown in court. Now, Ronnie wasn't done there. They also had a daughter, and she was special needs. She was autistic nonverbal. Now, this little girl, she didn't have the ability to communicate the horror and terror that her mother and brother did. She didn't have the ability to beg her father to stop as he took her life with a hatchet. Now, after he had taken the life of his daughter, he still wasn't done. Now, remember how I said the son would survive this attack? Well, that's who he moved on to next. His son was only 8 years old at this time, and the father, Ronnie, would try and take his son's life by stabbing him multiple times, and then he set the house on fire. Now, when rescue workers arrived to the home, and I mean, to their surprise, they saw them come out. The son stumbles out of the home, and basically he says something to the effect of, and this would come up in court, my father killed my mother, or something along these lines, and then he collapses. Now, y'all, even on the stand during this trial, one of the workers, one of the firefighters, I should say, he was on the stand, he was describing what took place, and y'all, I'm not my hair on my arms is standing up right now. This one got to me. So he's describing, like, you know, we're going in the house, you know, obviously you know what a house is like when it's smoky and everything and burning and whatnot. So he's like, we were slipping around and they see that it's blood and they're like looking for victims and people and trying to save people. And he said there was like, it looked like someone had dumped a cabinet, a drawer of knives everywhere. And so he said finally they found the daughter like in the back of the home, and it was clear that she was dead, and you know that she was no longer with us, and it obviously a horrifying death that she had suffered through. And so the firefighter said, I just was able to hug another firefighter and cry. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got the goosebumps right now. That's how horrible a scene this was. That's how terrifyingly atrocious the terror that this man inflicted on his family. I mean, that says a whole lot. I mean, these people are trained to be in these situations and all that. And I mean, just seeing that, I mean, what else could you do? Especially if you were a parent and you're going into a scene like that. And I mean, even just the fleeting thought of, oh my God, how could someone do this to their own children, let alone to another human being? Like I said earlier, another heartbreaking aspect to this trial was the fact that the son got up there and testified. And again, I'm very proud of him for doing that. That is extremely brave. I mean, honestly, I was trying to imagine myself like, okay, Paul, imagine you're on the stand testifying against your father, you know, and he's almost turning 12 at this point in time during the trial. You know, again, this happened when he was 8 years old. I can't imagine. I mean, I cannot imagine what a brave young man. Y'all, the story he paints through his testimony, again, it's a tearjerker. I mean, I'm just like, oh my God. The son will say that he hears his mom and dad yelling and fighting, and he goes in there and he sees them, you know, they're screaming, they're yelling, they're fighting, that kind of thing. And so soon thereafter, the mother will run and hide in his sister's like closet in her room or whatever. And so then he says that the father comes in a little bit later and basically is telling the son, you're going to come in here to help me, you know, take your mother out, to take her life. And this part just gets me. The son says that his father brings him in the room, and the father makes him take the shotgun, and the father helps him hold it and point the trigger at his mother. And the son will say, I don't remember if the gun went off when I pulled the trigger. You know, and just that part right there, take any evidence, whatever. The fact that this boy is like, I don't know if I killed my mom. I don't know if I did. Even if it didn't, even if he did, whatever. Because the evidence will show that other stuff happened. But the fact that he's like, I don't remember. I mean, number one, you know how when like really traumatic things happen and your brain just kind of blocks it out? And I'm just like, oh my God. I can't imagine my father putting a gun in my hand and like helping me like you're shooting at a deer or something, except it's your mother and he's telling you to take her life. I can't imagine that trauma, let alone for then what happens to him a little bit later. So after that, he says, okay, so then, you know, after that whole scene, you know, I watched my dad take my sister's life, and then dad comes after me. Now he'll say that his dad went in the garage, he followed him, his dad like was holding him down on the ground with his foot, and at this point the son's like, you know what, I just kind of blinked out. And he says that he remembers him lighting a match, throwing it down, and then he said he remembered walking out of the house, you know, like towards, you know, the rescue workers or whatever, and, you know, saying something to them, passing out, and that's where his memory kind of stops with everything. Bless his heart. He would be treated for 2nd and 3rd degree burns as well as multiple stab wounds. Even the investigators on the stand would talk about how they smelled gasoline on the son's clothing as well as his sister, the little girl. Now y'all, this is the next part that literally makes you want to come through the screen at this monster. And again, I said this in my True Crime Dishing Time video I did the other day because I talked about this a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of reiterate it here. This is what I was afraid of Letitia Stalk doing in her case when she was trying to represent herself. This is what happens and is, you know, my fear of what happens when people choose to represent themselves, because they are able to, in my opinion, continue to victimize the victims. So Ronnie O Neal III did not disappoint in this. So he is able to cross-examine his son. Now, first things first, he completely changes this angry demeanor, all this. He's very talking to him like a child, but it comes off as so fake.
Did you see me beat your mom?
No.
Did you see me shoot your mom?
No.
Who was getting the shooting? And you said, your mom. And she said, okay, did you see it? And you said, I heard it. and saw it. Do you remember saying that to her?
No, I did not.
Also, he has the nerve to tell his son, it's good to see you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy is insane. One thing that Ronnie O Neal is going to try to do is discredit his son's testimony, to say that the son is contradicting himself from things that the son said, back when he was being interviewed till now. Again, the evidence that the son is presenting, as well as other people in this case, is so damning. I find it almost humorous that Ronnie O Neal is just trying to focus on this one aspect, because here's my sofa opinion, my inexperienced sofa opinion. They could have been like 100%, yep, you know what, we discredited the son's testimony, it's too contradictory, and it wouldn't have mattered. There is so much other evidence in this, and I'm like, guilty. Now, at one point, Ronnie will ask him, did I hurt you? And the son's having to say, yeah, you stabbed me. I mean, there's a special place in hell for this guy. Now, he will also go into, like I said, with trying to get the son to contradict things, and he's like, did you see me hurt your mom? No. Did you see me do this to your sister? No. So there's that level going on, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter, because the son's testimony is absolutely heartbreaking, and Ronnie O Neal III has been so horrifying up there that it's just a freak show to watch this guy. Now, there is another brighter side to the story, for the son at least, and this, again, it's literally a waterworks episode, I call it. So the son was adopted by one of the detectives, and the detective would get up on the stand and talk about this dynamic, and I was just like, you know what, thank God. Because when things like this happen, I'm always like, oh my God, what is this poor child going to do? I don't know what his family situation is outside, his mom and Ronnie O Neal. I don't even call him a dad, but outside Ronnie, I don't know, what the family situation is. So basically, this detective gets up there, and he says that, yeah, you know what, it all began with the guardian ad litem being like, hey, do you know someone that could possibly foster him, take him to his medical appointments, that type thing. So the officer is like, yeah, you know what, me and my wife will totally do that. You know what, we've got it. So fast forward to November of 2019, they officially adopted him. My heart goes out to the young Ronnie. The son's name is also Ronnie. That's why I keep saying Ronnie the Third. So my heart goes out to the young Ronnie. I am so hopeful and thankful for this family that has adopted him, that I hope that Ronnie is now enveloped in a loving environment. I hope he is getting the therapy that he needs. I hope that he is able to heal as much as one could from that. I think it will literally take an entire lifetime to do that, because I can't imagine going through that. But kudos to him for being able to turn around just a few years later at 11 years old and testify in a scenario like this. I would be shaking in my boots to do that at this point in life. Shockingly, on the cross-examination of the detective that adopted the young Ronnie, his father, Ronnie III, thanked the detective. He was like, I have nothing to do but to thank you and all that. My opinion is that's totally fake, and he knew, he's enough of a narcissist and a psychopath to know that that's the only thing he could have done with that, because it's not going to make him look good at all if he did anything less than that. And there is some level of trying to still get some, points or whatever. Now, once the state rested in this case, it was Ronnie's time to defend himself, and he had a pretty tough client to defend, if you ask me. Ronnie would call 3 people up to the stand. I don't know why he called these people up. I'm like, I can only think that he wants a date with Old Sparky, and that he was going out with a bang on this. So he called 3 people up, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't help you at all. One of the witnesses that he would call was a neighbor who said that they saw everything through the window. And they literally saw everything through the window. And that's where I was like, why would you even think to do that? I mean, I'm just like, I would have tucked my tail and not said a word for my defense. I would have been like, yep, we arrest too, thanks, bye. Now, the neighbor would say that O'Neal stood over his girlfriend and did the striking thing before shooting her. And even when Ronnie's like, are you sure you saw that? They're like, yeah, yeah, pretty sure. So that didn't help. Now, another one of the witnesses was the baby mama that he has another kid with. Remember earlier, he was like, oh, they were fighting and all this. Her whole reasoning in getting up there was for him to confirm that, yes, she was arguing with the victim a few weeks earlier before the murder, and that she never got along with her. And so I'm just like, yeah, nice, cute. Great way to continue to victim shame her in her afterlife. Real winner here. Now finally he would call another detective who had gotten like some 911 dispatch records but never really went over them or anything. And I think the reasoning behind him doing this is him just trying to prove of the tampering and that type situation that the state and all these people have done. It didn't work well at all. And so that was his defense, and he rested. Now, closing arguments for him, y'all, he decides to go back to his screaming and yelling. And I was just like, no, we are being trolled at this point, y'all. We are being trolled. Someone's going to jump out and say, you're on hidden camera, da-da-da. But no, it's real.
Statements are conflicting all of a sudden because he's been adopted by a detective who worked in this case. I told you that in my opening statement. So my son verified that I was telling you the truth. My son said in trial that I ran back in the house and pulled his sister to his mom's room. But in the interview with Detective Dirks, page 9 of 23, March 26, 2018, he told Detective Dirks that his sister was already in his mom's room before we ran outside.
Now, a lot of his yelling ends up getting directed at the state to the point that the judge has to be like, no, you need to direct that towards the jury. They're the ones that are going to decide the fate of your life. Now, I did think that some of the facial expressions on the judge as well as other people in the courtroom completely summed up everyone's thoughts on this, because at this point it was just like, how are we even arriving at this place in life? What have I done to end up in this whole scenario? This guy is completely crazy, and you just almost want to think, is this on purpose? Anyways, the whole point of his closing statements is to try to tear apart his son's testimony and to go back in with this whole thing of government tampering and all this type of stuff. It lasts about 30 minutes, like I said, and then he rounds it out. Y'all, it didn't even take jurors half a day to come back with a guilty verdict. This is one of those where, you know, they went in the back and played some cards or something and then came out in an appropriate amount of time, so the judge wasn't like, what, you only did that in 5 minutes? Because, I mean, please. You know, I mean, he's admitting, I killed her, and he's coming up with this just bizarre reasonings why that do not add up. Now, they found him guilty on all 7 charges. We're talking first degree murder, we're talking arson, we're talking attempted murder, the whole shebang, okay? Now, at this point, the judge is like, I'm really urging you to look into having an experienced attorney represent you, because this is like the most serious part of a case for any defendant at all. So your life is on the line, basically. Now, at the time of this recording, that hasn't happened yet. Sentencing has not taken place. I don't know yet if he is going to have an attorney actually represent him. We're going to have to do a SOFA update later on that. The level of evil and ego that comes through in this defendant, Ronnie O Neal III, is so shocking. It's so absurd. Honestly, during his opening statements, when he took that direction, I was waiting for people to burst out in like nervous laughter, because that's kind of what I did at first. I was like, you know, is this real? Like, what is he thinking? Because you're just seeing these people who have gone to school for years and years over this stuff, and you're seeing this guy get up here, and it's not to say that there might not be some situations where people represent themselves, and there's a level of, you know what, they're inexperienced, this isn't their gig, obviously, and then there's this, where it's so obvious that this person is off in left field. They're wanting to utilize this experience to victim shame, victim bash, continue to victimize people, the whole 9 yards. So I'm just looking at the people in the courtroom, and I know they're all thinking the same thing, where they're like, what, is this guy crazy? You know, and yes, he is. Not in the way that he doesn't, you know what he did, because I think he completely did. He's a total monster. And again, my heart goes out to the surviving boy, the son. You know, kudos to you for being able to get up there and testify and help bring justice for your family and yourself. I think that's amazing. I think he's going to be an amazing young man, and I think it's also amazing that he was taken in by, I'm hoping and assuming, a loving family who is providing a safe, healing environment for him. Now, that's all for today. Like I said earlier, if you want to see other videos by me, consider joining Patreon or a channel membership. You're going to see stuff in there that's, you know, absurd crimes, things that are too hot to dish here in the main channel, and story times. Also, there's my other channel, A Slice of Dice and a Spice Movie Reviews. Check that out. It's all free. You can see me dish on some scary movies when I watch them. And that's it. Thank you again to all the supporters, the shares, the people who interact. I do appreciate it. Thank you for making the Sofa Squad a wonderful place to be and for helping these victim stories get out there. Now, until next time, everybody, I'll see you then.